Why is our society prone to such high levels of violent crime against women? Well, to take a look at that question is Mbuyiselo Botha from the Commission for Gender Equality. And of course, as the Commission, you've recently released some research that you've been doing into police officers and their capacity and capability to attend to violence against women. And the results are not impressing in the least.
Oh, indeed, Kathy, they're not impressive, and in fact, they're shocking. But that's what we more of the note as communities we know. In fact, what the Commission's report does is to confirm what the long-held view that there are issues of capacity, there are issues of leadership. Yeah.
One of the things that concerned me the most was that even though at least according to a report, police officers are knowledgeable on issues of domestic violence, they don't necessarily understand the legislation that accompanies it and empowers them to do their jobs under the Domestic Violence Act.
Yeah, very true. But in fact, Kathy, if you read the report, is that some of them may not even understand, the act in its totality. I mean, you would find, and when we talk about the Domestic Violence Act, can you remember that it's almost for 20 years, legislated 1998, it's 20 years now, but a lot of them, you'd find that there's a need for training, there's a need for capacitating them, because other than them not understanding the law, and some could excuse that, look, it may be complicated, but it's also the spirit of the law that the report talks about it when a case is that most of them may not even, one may understand and not justify why they don't understand the legalities. But also it's important to say how many of them understand that, you see, the spirit of the law, which is for us very important.
I'm thinking now about the correlation of an officer who does not fully perhaps understand the law and then has to go out to a scene and collect evidence and immediately then link that up with the number of conviction rates that the state is able to secure when it comes to violence against women. Low conviction rates, and oftentimes because evidence has not been collected correctly. Is there a link between all of these issues that I'm bringing up?
Absolutely, Kathy. I mean, the dots would be connected. I mean, you go in because the scene may not be properly secured, the statements not properly written. I mean, but also the survivor may also secondary victimization, but also the police not being able to even understand as to, other than the pain, but how, what the survivor went through. So these doors, you are correct that, there is a link because ultimately it is when police do a proper job, when all of these things speak to each other, to one another, then you are able to make it easier for NPA. I mean, look at what has happened now, how when the prosecutor praises the police, we've done sterling work, in the recent case that you are reporting on. So it's important that, Kathy, police are aware that, the crime scene, taking of statements, if all of them are done correctly, possibilities are there.
But these things seem like very basic things.
Yeah, they seem like basic, but it could also be, in some instances, a dereliction of duty, that it could be a lack of, that there are no consequences, that when I don't do or follow, a manual, because some of these things are properly laid out. As you point out, they could be basic to you and I. But then it could be that a policeman and women would actually have a sense that, look, there are no consequences. That is why, Kathy, the issue of, we need to deal with impunity, that if our policemen and women, who some of them do sterling work under difficult circumstances, but if they know that, look, it is not only about taking all of these properly, it's also, there's a life involved there. There's a life that is lost, or there's a woman there. There's a human being there. They're not just numbers. If that is properly, if that's properly processed by them when a case, possibilities are that we would have these convictions going up. But as long as police, and maybe with the new management and what you're seeing happen in the country, probably we may find a different set of results.
All right, certainly. So more empathy needed from the system, if I'm hearing you correctly. Now, as the GCE, you've of course come up with your recommendations. As a Chapter 9 institution, you know, and this is also a conflict, I suppose. You'll do great research, you'll come up with recommendations, but you know, how much further do you take it? Because often it becomes, this report, as shocking as your findings may be, they end up as that. What are you going to do to ensure that this research becomes more than just an indictment on the police, but that you're able to follow up and ensure that your recommendations of capacitating the police are followed up on, especially leadership within the police service?
Well, there are two processes. One, engaging Parliament. I mean, women in the presidency. I mean, the portfolio committee, important, firstly. But secondly, Kathy, the Ministry of Police, where the commission would look, these reports, because most of them, in the recommendations, they seek to support the SAPS, that look, we're in this thing together. Because if the SAPS fail, they don't only fail us as a commission, but they fail women in this country. So, I mean, if you remember, one of the priorities of the minister had said that he would want to focus on violence against women as a priority. So part of what we will be doing, I mean, led by our chairperson, is to ensure that the ministry is, how do we make sure that these, recommendations are implemented? How do we make sure?
But that happens with every other report, with all due respect, Ntate Botha, oftentimes, whether it's the Gender Commission, whether it's the Human Rights Commission, the recommendations, they sit in the report archives, and continuously there's always, we're working on these findings, we note the findings, and we're working on implementation, but we never actually get the full results of what these reports are finding.
Well, the Act allows us, if upon engaging the minister, then we are not satisfied, because there will be time frames. Kathy, you will not, as a commission, leave it up to the minister and say, look, we'll implement. We would have to agree on the time frames. That we would be able, the agreement is that, Kathy, by X date, they should be implemented. And how do we then come back and hold you accountable? So I think that if there is a commitment from the ministry, because I think, again, let me emphasize, these reports seek to ensure that police give service to women in this country who on almost every day at the receiving end of violence. So the point I'm making this evening is that I think we are hopeful that upon having this meeting with the minister and agreeing that minister, all we seek to do with these recommendations is to capacitate, to support, because, look, we want, it's a win-win situation. If they're implemented, it means that we're going to deal with violence in our country. So it's not like it's not like something that we, as a commission, that it's nice to do. It's something that this country needs, and we need it not yesterday, but now.
All right. Well, we'll see what comes out of that meeting with the Police Minister Mbuyiselo Botha from the Commission for Gender Equality.